Good morning, friends. Let's take a moment just to breathe together, become aware of your breath, to feel your feet here on this floor, just to show up here in the space together, to feel also that deep gratitude for the sunshine that we've had the last few days. Is summer really finally here? So just let ourselves feel that, become aware of ourselves here in this moment. As we continue into our Forming Questions summer series, I'm here to introduce our speaker for today via video. Thank you for your continuing grace for me to use this medium, to use video to be with you, as I'm still in recovery from post-concussion syndrome, which just makes public speaking hard because my heart rate, it goes up just from that natural adrenaline that we have from public speaking, right? And my body is still struggling to regulate that in a normal way, because our bodies have good memories, right? So my body knows that it got hit, and it's relearning that it is actually okay, and it's not going to get hit again, but it still holds this kind of defensive posture, and it still holds a heightened sense of fear in those moments when my adrenaline raises my heart rate because of that trauma that my body is still releasing, which it is releasing. It is getting better. I am getting better. And I just keep holding that balance of taking enough rest, pacing myself, while also taking incremental steps back into doing all of the things. Like last Sunday I had the chance to preside for Holy Communion again for the first time. I think it had been 7 months. And it was just so deeply moving and meaningful and teary-eyed for me to share that space with y'all again and to hold that. So thank you for that. But I even just doing that, like through worship, my heart rate was up near 100 beats per minute just as I sat through worship. That's how it was, which is just crazy, right? Man, our bodies, they are weird and they are amazing. I mean, they heal, which is pretty phenomenal. Just all to say, I am getting better. Slow and steady progress continues. Just thank you for your continued grace and love and prayer for me in the midst of this time. But now, today, friends, hang on to your seats, because in our summer series of Forming Questions, we knew we wanted to invite back Rabbi Ted Falcon. Were you able to hear him speak back in January? Rabbi Ted was here and he spoke on Jewish prayer with just such a phenomenal conversation and experience together. So we knew we wanted him to come back and dig into one of the good questions from the Hebrew scriptures, from the Old Testament. So to place some context just about why we have a rabbi with us today. So here at Salt House, we love making room and hearing from a diversity of voices and perspectives and traditions, which absolutely includes Judaism. As Jesus followers, we are so deeply rooted in Judaism, and we forget that, right? But Christianity is birthed out of Judaism, which means we're all family, right? And like a family, we benefit so much by listening to our family stories. And in this case, our Jewish grandparents, right? Those who are further up on our family tree, those who have been in the traditions and in the story of God longer than we have. Jesus was a Jew. So for us to hold the questions that come up in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, our experience is deepened to see it through a Jewish lens. So today, Rabbi Ted Falcon, he represents our Jewish grandparents, which is pretty great. So he will help us form our own questions around a question that is asked in the Bible. He'll weave in some of his own story and invite us deeper into our own stories too. In his decades of ministry, Rabbi Ted has launched and formed progressive Jewish faith communities. He's been a voice in interfaith dialogue between Muslims, Christians, and Jews. He is someone with a great affection for Jesus and with an affection for Salt House specifically, and that growing affection is mutual. So friends, we take a deep breath, staying connected, being present in this moment. We open ourselves up to that breath, the ruah, which is that Hebrew word for spirit and for wind and for breath. We breathe deeply now as we welcome back to the Salt House microphone, Rabbi Ted Falcon.
You know, by all rights, I should talk from up there. Anyway, it's an honor. This is a lovely place. And I love the idea of questions. You know, I remember in early philosophy classes learning that the hardest thing in the world is to find the right question. You know, that somehow questions are even more important than the answers. And what attracted me as I was looking for my question for this morning was actually the very first question that is asked in the Hebrew Bible. It's also the simplest question that is asked in the Hebrew Bible. In Hebrew, it's one word. And it's a question that's asked in the story by God to the first man. And the question is ayeka, which is a Hebrew word that means, where are you? Where are you? Perhaps you remember that in the Garden of Eden story, after eating the forbidden fruit, hearing God wandering in the garden, an incredibly anthropomorphic vision of a deity, but it's myth. You know, this is the language of myth. Myth is a way that human beings have of conveying truth with a capital T. Truth with a small t is fact truth. You know, we can look is this factually true? Truth with a capital T is a truth that kind of transcends time, transcends culture. And we tell such truths through story, we tell such truths through song, we tell such truths through myth. Myth is like a group dream. It's like something deeply human that takes place not only outside us, but inside us. So in that story, where God is wandering in the garden and the man is hiding, God says, ayeka, where are you? It's a great story. It appeals to me for several reasons. When I was considering what question to respond to, the first question I was called to was a question that was asked of Jesus, namely, what's the most important teaching in Torah? And Pastor Sarah said to me, I think you mentioned that the last time you spoke here. I rarely have any memory of what I say, which is actually a great gift. So I watched the video, and the question that came to mind as I watched that video was, where am I? Where am I? Because what I was doing in that video was what I often do when I speak, and I'm walking in order to make contact with people. And what I saw was I walked across the video screen, and then I disappeared off to this side. The sound is still coming. I wander back in. I thought, I don't think that's the way to do it. So it was a great response, and a great response to the question, hey, where are you in that? If I'm not I'm off to the side somewhere. You know, it's almost like, what do you call that? A normal distribution and the standard bell curve. I'm off to the edges somewhere. So I was thinking about the where are you that was asked of the man, and I was thinking, you know, one of the problems with that story is that our interpretations of the story often eclipse what the story itself is saying. For example, I'm sure most of you know that story. If I were to ask you, what fruit was it that the woman took, ate, and gave to her husband? What fruit was it? Well, commonly it's thought to be an apple. Most people know for sure it's an apple, until they read the text and notice that there is no apple in there. And they might look at geographical information to know that actually apples don't grow in that area of the world. There is only actually one fruit tree mentioned in the story. And so we can pretty much imagine that the one fruit tree that's mentioned was the fruit that was on the tree. You know what that was? Okay, look, there's this book called the Bible. It starts with a thing called Genesis. Yeah. You guys all know it. You were just kind of shy. The fig tree, which if you really look at the nature of the story, is a perfect tree to illustrate something. There's another word that actually is not in the story that is assumed to be in the story, and that's the word sin. The story is perceived to be the fall, and it's perceived to be the sin, sometimes labeled the original sin. But if you read the story, there's no mention of the word sin. The story's not about sin. The story's about something far more important. So here's the deal. It's not even the only creation story in the Torah. The first story goes through the 6 days of creation and the 7th day of Shabbat. This is the second story, but because of the way the Bible is edited, the newest stories go at the beginning, the oldest stories wind up getting toward the end. The actual oldest story of the 3 in the Bible starts in chapter 5, where it just says, God created human beings, male and female, he created them. And then it gets expanded in the story that gets called Adam and Eve. Boy, I feel weird not walking. So here's the setup. These people are created God creates a person. We think the person's name is Adam, but actually in the Hebrew it's not. It's human. Adam, Ha-Adam is the human. God creates human being. Not yet a name. And then God takes from the side of this human, the woman. Oftentimes it's seen as a rib, it's really side. The image is man and woman who were created together in chapter 5 in the story of Adam and Eve are conjoined. You can't meet each other when you're looking the same way. You have to be able to see each other. So the woman and the man are separated so that they can meet, so that we can find each other. And the man is told, here's a garden, all the food you can possibly want is on the trees. The image is there are fruit trees, there are bread trees. You want a loaf of bread, it's on a tree. But there are 2 special trees in the garden, and one is the tree of life, and one is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So God says you can eat of all the trees except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because if you eat of that tree, you will, mot to mutun is the Hebrew, you will surely die, meaning you'll immediately die. Now, that's an interesting thing. You know, human psychology has not changed a real lot. If you say to somebody, you can eat of every tree here except that one, you know what happens. And one would think that God would know. I mean, in the story, God created the guy. I mean, this is basic psychology. Try to tell your kids you can have everything except that. So you enter the serpent, one of the most misunderstood creatures in the Bible. Do you know there are 3 creatures in the Hebrew Bible who speak? Do you know which they are? Yes, good. Who said that? Okay, you get a point for that. Jason, you're cheating. You saw the script. The donkey in the story of Bilam, the serpent in the Garden of Eden, and one other animal who speaks. This is a trick question. Yeah, Ryan's got it. We're the third animal that speaks. So, okay, I know that the serpent is identified as some kind of evil being, but this is myth, this is story, and we got to let go of that preconception and just look at the story. So the serpent says to the woman, "So I hear that you're not allowed to eat of any tree of the garden." "No," she says. "We can eat of any tree of the garden except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We can't eat of that and we can't touch it." She added that. Because we'll die. And the serpent says to her, "If you eat of that tree, you'll be like God, knowing good and evil." If you eat of that tree, you're not going to immediately die. Now, this is an interesting thing because the reality is the serpent is speaking truth. If they eat of the tree, they're not going to suddenly drop dead. If they eat of the tree, they're going to know something that they didn't know before. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is the tree of mind. It's the tree of the awareness that knows distinctions, that knows separation, that knows contrast. If you examine the way our minds work, our minds only know through contrast. If we didn't know sweet, we wouldn't know sour. If we didn't know easy, we wouldn't know difficult. If everything went perfectly well in our lives all the time, we'd never know it. I mean, literally. This is the land. We live in a land of contrast. This is how we deal. Warm, cold, summer, winter. Ease, challenge, calmness, fear. You know, we measure everything. How am I today? How am I feeling? What's going on? And the woman looks, and this is really woman. Woman energy, woman consciousness. The woman looks and sees that the tree is good for food. Nourishing. And then she sees that the tree is beautiful. It's desired. It's like, okay, physical, heart. And then she sees that the tree is good to make one wise. It's like all the areas of human physical nourishment, heart nourishment, brain nourishment. And she says, yeah. And then, she doesn't take any convincing. She gives it to her husband, and they eat. And then it says they know they're naked. And this is really an interesting one, because we have notions of what that means. And so when it says they took fig leaves, which is the only tree that's mentioned. They took fig leaves and they tried to make themselves clothes. And the pictures we get is what they tried to do was cover their genitals. It doesn't actually say that. But this is the thing. You're naked, there's something that needs to be covered. That's us. I'm not sure that's in the myth. At which point comes the question, because then the sound of God, the voices of God is wandering in the garden, and the man and the woman hide themselves, and God says, Ayeka, where are you? Where are you? Now, that is an interesting thing. Like, wouldn't God know where he is? But the question is asked because it's a question that needs to be responded to, needs to be answered by the one who's hiding, not the one who's looking. So God says, Ayeka, where are you? And Adam says, I'm hiding because I'm naked. Ah, says God, how did you know you're naked? Have you eaten of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that I told you? It's just of course you've eaten of it. How else would you know? Something has awakened in you. Your eyes have been opened. And you're hiding. It's really an extremely human posture. How revealed dare we be in our world? How much of what goes on in our minds, how much of what goes on in our hearts, how much of what goes on in our bodies are we really willing to share at any moment when we are asked in one way or another, where are you? Where are you? And the man, of course, explains, defends. Oh, God, we're good at defending. The man says, well, yeah, I ate of the tree because the woman, namely, the woman you brought to me, convinced me to eat of it. God didn't say, I didn't hear any convincing. God turns to the woman and says, how come you did? The woman says, I didn't do it. It's like the serpent did it. Everybody, blame is not my fault. I didn't do it. She made me do it. I didn't do it. The serpent made me do it. And then come what's called punishments. So the punishment for the serpent is that the serpent gets to be a snake. We don't know what the serpent looked like before. It's weird in the pictures, because in the pictures you got a snake in the tree. Well, it can't be, because the mere fact that, okay, now the serpent crawls on the floor must mean it wasn't like that before. And now the woman is going to have childbirth, and there's going to be sex. Whoa. And you're going to like it. And for the man, you're going to have to farm. You're not going to live in a land where the trees bear everything. And you're going to die. You're going to die. You're not going to die right now. It's almost as if God is saying the serpent actually told you the truth. You're not going to die right now, but you're going to die. That's the cost. Now, there's two things that happen that are really critical. One is that the man names his wife. And herein lies just a terrible thing that has to do with translation. The biblical verse says, and the man turns to his wife and says, therefore your name is Eve, because you are the mother of all the living. I'm not sure where the word Eve came from. In Hebrew it says, therefore your name is Chava, because you are the mother of all Chai. Chava is a form of the Hebrew word for life, which is Chai. Chai, a lot A lot of Jewish people will wear the Hebrew letters Chai, life. Only problem is sometimes if they get reversed, it spells Yich. Anyway. If what the woman had done was a sin, if what the woman had done was really bad, the man would have turned to her as they're about to leave. They've already received the consequences of that act, and he would have said, therefore your name is mud. Not therefore your name is life, because you're the mother of all living. It's like, what is going on here? This is not punishment. This is consequence. This is if you choose to eat of the tree that is nourishing for the body, that is a delight to the heart, that makes one wise, you're going to be the mother of all life. The second thing that is often misinterpreted is that God then gives the man and the woman skins. And you wonder, well, skins of who? Like, are we wearing bear skins or mink? Or, well, guess what? The skin we're given is the skin we've got. God gives us this, is the skin, because the myth is about becoming incarnate. It's about incarnation. And the path of incarnation is the path of separation. The path of incarnation is the path of entering into birth, the cycles of birth and death. This is what it costs. You want to be born, you're going to die. You want to die, you're going to be born. Here we are. And more than that. I'll tell you a little thing about Kabbalah. You know the word Kabbalah. It's the heart of the Jewish mystical tradition. Kabbalah is a Hebrew word that literally means that which is revealed. It's like the ongoing process of revelation as understood in Jewish tradition. So one of the things the Kabbalists would do is they'd look at the Hebrew in the Bible. Now we're talking 14th century, 13th century, 14th century. They're looking at the Hebrew, and every Hebrew letter has a numerical equivalent. Hebrew alphabet has 22 letters, so it's 1 to 22. And they look at words that have the same numerical equivalent, and they go, that may be a reminder that there is a correspondence between these. The Hebrew word nachash, which is the serpent, has a correspondence to the Hebrew word Mashiach. Mashiach is the Hebrew word for Messiah. And what the Kabbalists indicate is that if we imagine, I grew up with a house that had this swinging door from the kitchen into the dining room. Anybody know that kind of door? It's a dangerous door, but it swings both ways. And I have this image that there is, in a mythic world, there is this door. And there is an energy of temptation that invites us to enter from a non-incarnated state to an incarnated state. And the voice that urges us to do so is called Nachash. It translates serpent, who says, hey, it's good. You know, because what you've forgotten is how it feels to eat. What it feels like to meet each other and to be able to hug each other and to be able to love each other. And what it feels like to be able to think and create. And we go, oh yeah, okay. And then on the other side is Mashiach that says, okay, what you've forgotten is that actually you're more than incarnate. There's something bigger going on, and you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid of this birth and death cycle because you're more than this. You're both. And the image is each and every one of us has made that choice. Nobody made us do it. Nobody made us eat of that tree. Nobody made us decide to incarnate. So there's nobody to blame. It's like we did it. We forgot why we did it. And we got to remember why we did it. Because we did it to be able to taste the nourishment that the earth offers and protect the earth so that it can continue to provide the nourishment. We did it so that we can open to love that connects us and reminds us how amazing this journey is. And we did it so that we could appreciate the incredible creativity of the mind, how we can know, how we can understand, how we can evolve. Whoa. We get so caught up. And in our getting caught up, there is a question that is asked of the first man, and there's a question that is asked of every person, and that's Ayeka. Where are you now? A lot of my tradition, my Jewish tradition, comes from the 18th century, Eastern Europe, a tradition called Hasidism. Hasid literally means a pious one. And it's a piety of heart. It's a piety of fuller consciousness. And one of the Rebbes, one of the great rabbis of that movement, is named Schneur Zalman. And it happened that he was imprisoned. This is White Russia, this is 18th century. And the jailer, who was a 46-year-old, obviously non-Jew, who is very literate in the Bible. And he's got a Rebbe in prison, and he comes to the Rebbe and he says, I have a question for you. And the Rebbe says, okay. And he says, look, if God knows everything, how come God says to Adam, where are you? Why is that? And the Rebbe says Schneur Zalman says to the jailer, do you believe that the truths in the Bible are actually enduring truths that are not only meant for that moment, but are meant throughout all time? And the jailer says, yes, I do. And the Rebbe says, the Ayeka, where are you, is meant for all of us. It's like God asks us in every moment, Ayeka, where are you in the life that you have been given? And he says directly to the jailer, where are you in the 46 years that you so far have been given? And the jailer in the story is so struck by the intimacy and the knowing of that Rebbe that he starts weeping. And sometimes I think weeping is the response to really hearing the question and looking at how much of our time we forget, how much of our time we kind of go on automatic and neglect what is most critical and what is most crucial to do in our lives and in our world. To look out at the extreme fragmentation and polarization and anger and degradation of our planet and go, where are we? And where am I? And how am I showing up in a way that's healing and in a way that's remembering and in a way that's loving? So I have a suggestion for an answer. And it's a totally biblical answer to the question, Ayeka, where are you? And the answer is, Hineni. Hineni means, here I am. Here I am. It's like Adam saying, here I am, and I'm afraid. I'm afraid. I know fear. But instead of saying, she made me eat, say, I chose. I chose. And now I know fear. Okay. This is where I am, wherever I am. Hineni. A prophet, when called in the Bible, responds with Hineni. Here I am. And sometimes I wonder, does the Hineni actually follow the call? Like you experience yourself called to be present and you say Hineni, or do they come together? Does the call and the Hineni come at the same time? Or does the Hineni actually precede the call? Does standing in the honesty and in the integrity of our present moment actually create the environment for us to hear what is being asked of us, what we are uniquely able to contribute to our world, to our communities, to our families, to our planet, and to ourselves? Ayeka, where are you? And I invite you each to engage the Hebrew word hineni. Ready? If I say ayeka, we say, hineni. Thank you.